welcome to Clear Voice. I'm John Monahan.
And I'm Christine Caswell. Clear Voice, the news magazine that brings the world into focus through a Catholic lens.
We continue visiting Blessed John the 23rd National Seminary in Weston, Massachusetts, which is the only seminary in the country administered by diocesan priests for candidates between the ages of 30 and 60.
And John, this week we talked to Ron Catani, who served as an advisor under 4 Colorado governors before enrolling in Blessed John the 23rd. Ron spoke about the transition from one career to the next and about his spiritual growth.
I grew up in West Denver in a 850 square foot house. Literally started school in the last two-room red brick schoolhouse in Denver. And then in 4th grade started going to Catholic school with the Sisters of Mercy. Went to Jesuit High School, Regis Jesuit High School in Denver, and then went to graduate and undergraduate school at the Colorado School of Mines in Golden. And then in 1985 I was a senior executive fellow at the Kennedy School here at Harvard. And so that really is sort of my educational background, primarily energy and mineral focus. I worked for the state of Colorado for 35 years and ostensibly was the mineral and energy advisor to the last 4 Colorado governors. I started in the governor's office in 1974 while I was still in school when the Arab oil embargo happened. In 1977 was one of the founders of the Governor's Energy Office. In 79 and 80, I was the liaison between the National Governors Association and the White House during the gasoline crisis. And in 1981, moved to the Department of Natural Resources, where I was for the next 28 years. I was caregiver for my parents for the last 12 years of their lives. I'm an only child. I came along a little bit later in their lives and was blessed with the fact that my dad lived to 94 years old, passed away in 2001, and my mother to 99 and a half, passed away in 2008. The blessing for them was that they both just walked with a cane, were mentally alert. We'd just come back from 2-week vacations and literally were home until the last 12 hours of their lives. And God blessed me with the privilege really of being with both of them when they went to be with the Lord. Saturday morning I was going to go to 8 o'clock Mass over at the cathedral, got over to the cathedral, discovered that Mass was at 7 o'clock, so I went downtown to the church downtown, and which is where I'd gone to weekly confession for years. Holy Ghost Church is operated by the Oblates of the Virgin Mary, who are based here in Boston. And so I went to Mass, and after Mass, the assistant pastor was doing a small baptism there. And I was just in the back of the church, and I started watching all this. And when the baptism was concluded, they took the baby, and they took it to the Mary altar and dedicated the baby to the Blessed Mother. And that was when it hit me. And I knew that that's what I was being called for. It was as if everything that I certainly was at peace with all the different aspects of my life, that leaving Denver to come here, which is where Archbishop Shep, who sends his older seminarians, was really very seamless. Now, having said that, when I was an adjunct at the University of Denver for 20 years, I never thought I'd be back, and nor did I ever want to be on the other side of that desk again. And so, you know, you take old bones and you take old brains and put them back in school again, and that in itself is its own challenge. But that's really the wonderful part of Blessed John. Blessed John, first of all, has incredible instructors, and certainly they're leaders in their field, and they know how to do in a relatively short period of time what seminaries for younger seminarians do over a 6 or 7 year period in a 4-year period. Number 2, they've mastered the art of adult education, and adults learn differently than young people do, and they've really figured out how to do that. Number 3, I think that the really interesting distinction between Blessed John and a regular seminary for the young'uns is that it really takes the intellectual component and the pastoral component and runs them parallel. And you don't usually get that in the younger seminaries. It's more sequential. And by doing that pastoral component concurrently with the education, whenever you're at your parish or your assignment, it makes every hour in your classroom worth it, number one. And number two, it really shows you what you're being called to do for the rest of your life. I don't know what the future holds. And you know what? I'm not worried about it. Because I think that one of the things that I've discovered in this whole process is that I have, at 57 years old, have a greater sense of peace and joy in my life than I've ever had in my life. And I lived a great life. And so that abandonment, if you will, to God and to God's will is very comforting to me. And I know that He is going to put me exactly where He wants me to be. Archbishop Shepu has a great line, which is that it should be a natural question for every young person to say, do I have a calling to the religious life? Whether they're boy or girl, do they have a call to be a religious sister? Do they have a call to be a priest or a brother or a deacon? That we spend a lot of time in our early years thinking, do I want to be a fireman, a policeman, an engineer, or a scientist, or an economist, or a doctor or a lawyer? But oftentimes that litany doesn't include the other two pieces. So number one, parents need to always remind their kids that that's a question that they should be asking. Number two is that the most important thing that people can do is pray for vocations. One of the greatest gifts to me right now is that I know that the people back at Mother of God Parish in Denver are praying for me. And the reason I know that is that at 1 o'clock in the morning, when I'm trying to figure out what Plato's trying to tell me, and I get that second wind, I know exactly where that second wind is coming from. And it's coming from the people at home that are praying for me. And third, my story is my story, and it's not about me. What is important about my story and the other incredible people that are here at Blessed John is for someone to say, if that's their story, what's my story? And is God part of that story? And is He calling me to do anything? And that's a question that you can only answer yourself. But I think as a community, as a church, as individuals, we need to constantly be asking that question and reinforcing the importance of religious life to not only community life, but to the future of this culture as well as the future of this church.
Next week, we meet 3rd Theology Seminarian James Nolte. James has a varied background. He's earned a law degree and spent 10 years as a Jesuit. Now to our next story. Thousands of Anglicans and about 100 Anglican priests are studying to enter into full communion with the Catholic Church. The Catholic News Service traveled to Maryland, where members and one pastor of an Anglican church spoke about their approaching conversion.
This is St. Luke's Episcopal Church in Bladensburg, Maryland, and its rector and the 100-plus families who worship here are preparing to become Catholics.
I do know that we will be taking catechism classes beginning on June 19th, Father's Day, next week.
If all of the steps are completed, St. Luke's will become the first U.S. Episcopal community to enter into the Roman Catholic Church through a new apostolic constitution approved by Pope Benedict XVI. It allows for Episcopalians in the U.S. to become Catholic, yet retain elements of their Anglican heritage and liturgical practices.
When I read the apostolic constitution in October that he was going to announce it, I thought, oh Lord, what a wonderful opportunity. Could it be possible? And my parish could fit into this. As Anglicans, we truly believe, or we want to say that Scripture is supreme. But in our studies, we decided, well, if that's so important, who's going to interpret it? Which bishop? And as we began to understand that, we thought, this can't be right. And that helped our journey to say there must be a central authority. There must be apostolic authority. And that really helped us in saying we want to become Roman Catholics.
This is sort of a personal journey for me in terms of coming home. When I was a teenager, I had a point in my life when I wanted to be a Catholic nun. Didn't last very long, but I was attracted to the Roman Catholic faith. I had friends that were Roman Catholic. I attended a Roman Catholic church with my friends on some Sundays and some Saturdays. And so I just think that God has always made a way for me to kind of somehow be connected with the Roman Catholic faith.
It's absolutely a sign that the Spirit is at work to see that some of us are now wholeheartedly on board. Others are saying, yes, I'll do it, even though I'm not sure that I fully understand or agree, but I'm willing to do it. Where that is a huge step from where they were. And it has to be the work of the Holy Spirit. There's no other way to explain it.
Though the Reverend Mark Lewis is married, he expects to begin an expedited process to become a Catholic priest and remain this community's pastoral leader. Members of the parish expect to become Catholic soon.
I know that we're scheduled to be received in the fall of the year, but I think everything is just penciled in at this point, and so it's flexible, and we just need to be flexible ourselves.
In Bladensburg, Maryland, I'm Chaz Muth for Catholic News Service.
Coming up next on Clear Voice.
Conference of Catholic bishops explained why it's against the practice. The report says assisted suicide doesn't promote compassion because its focus is not on eliminating suffering, but on eliminating the patient.
Catholic TV, America's Catholic television network, is honored to present the Mass from the Basilica of the National Shrine of the Immaculate Conception in Washington, D.C. every Saturday at 7 p.m. and 11:30 p.m. Mass from the National Shrine, America's Catholic Church, is on Catholic TV, America's Catholic television network.
During the past few weeks, we've been showing you many of the different churches in the Holy Land. Last week, we took a look at the Syriac Church of Antioch, and this week, we look at a church with similar origins.
The Syriac Orthodox Church is one of the oldest churches dating back to the early days of Christianity. It was begun in Antioch. Today, the church's patriarch resides in Syria. H2O News takes a closer look at the Syriac Orthodox Church.
Of all the Orthodox churches, the Syriac Church is probably the oldest after that of Jerusalem. Its presence goes back to the early days of Christianity. In fact, immediately after Pentecost, the gospel was preached in Antioch, inaugurating the first missions to the west and towards Asia. The Syriac Orthodox Church was quickly elevated to the status of patriarchate, but the vast territory under its jurisdiction afterward decreased. The Patriarchate of Constantinople removed a portion of its provinces. Others declared themselves autonomous, such as Persia in 410, Cyprus in 431, and Jerusalem in 451, when the Council of Chalcedon caused an even more radical division. The Christological dogma of the two natures is indeed highly contested in the East. The Patriarch of Antioch strongly defended the monophysite position, one nature of Christ. Attempts to oust him failed. Chalcedonians and non-Chalcedonians strongly opposed each other. The non-Chalcedonians, hostile to the domination of Byzantium in the 7th century, favored the victorious entry of Arab Muslims in Syria. These would ultimately only partially respect the freedoms promised to the Christians. But overall, the Chalcedonians have an easier situation than others. In the 16th century, the movement for union with Rome, led notably by the Capuchins, largely influenced the Syriac Church, and the idea of a Syriac Catholic Church was born. In 1781, a bishop was elected patriarch and professed the Catholic faith. He was followed by a number of faithful and clergy. But the other party elected its own patriarch, and so the Syriac Orthodox hierarchy persists. Related to the complex history of the Patriarchate of Antioch, two other Syrian Rite communities should be mentioned. Indeed, in the 17th century, an important part of the Malabar Church of India turned to the Syriac Orthodox Patriarchate and was placed under its jurisdiction. It is now a semi-autonomous church. In 1930, part of the church became Catholic while keeping the Syrian rite, and is now called the Malankara Church. The Patriarch of the Syriac Church resides in Damascus, Syria. The Syriac Orthodox bishops have been present in Jerusalem since 793 and permanently since 1471. Today, the Syriac Orthodox community in the Holy Land is small. It has 1,500 followers concentrated in the area of Bethlehem and Jerusalem. The Archbishop resides in Jerusalem at the Monastery of St. Mark. The Syriac Orthodox have an interest in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre and have a chapel there, where every Sunday at dawn they celebrate the liturgy. The Syrian rite is performed in Syriac, and readings are made in the local language. The main Eucharistic prayer is called the Anaphora of St. James. The liturgy of the Mass consists of 3 parts, called respectively the Sacrifice of Melchizedek, the Sacrifice of Aaron, and the Sacrifice of Jesus Christ. Many prayers originate from the Jewish tradition and demonstrate that the Syriac Church is partly inherited from Judeo-Christian communities. The political and economic situation weighs heavily on this small community and its development. However, the Syriac Orthodox Church has demonstrated a surprising strength. Able to cope with today's problems, she is trying to secure her future in the Holy Land.
Embryonic stem cell research is condemned by the Church because it involves the destruction of the human embryo. But adult stem cell research is something the Church supports, and so much so that the Vatican has entered into an agreement with an American adult stem cell research company called Neostem. Rome Reports explains the procedure, benefits, and why the Vatican is throwing its support behind adult stem cell research.
The Catholic Church has entered an agreement with a U.S. company that specializes in adult stem cells. The Vatican Department of Science and Faith has made an economic commitment of $1 million to Neostem through their charitable foundation. This is the first time the Vatican has entered into such an agreement with a publicly traded company to advance scientific research. Dr. Robin Smith is the CEO of Neostem, and she says that adult stem cell research is a way to improve healthcare while respecting the right to life.
I think, people are very focused on advancing science, and it has become a little bit of a political debate, but I think the key is safety, and I think whatever your political sway is, everyone wants to improve medicine, to advance technology, and to decrease human suffering.
By undergoing a painless 4-hour procedure, a person's stem cells are extracted and then frozen and stored in case one day they're ever needed. They can be used to treat diabetes, heart problems, stroke, and even bone growth. While the Vatican has not changed its stance on embryonic stem cell research, Dr. Smith says that adult stem cell technology is advancing more rapidly thanks to its safety.
There are people that are focused on advancing all types of stem cell therapy, both embryonic and adult. But I think the safety profiles of the adult stem cell are going to assist in making that advance more rapidly. And we even see today there's over 70 diseases that are using adult stem cells to treat them as part of the standard of care.
In 2006, Benedict XVI said there is no conflict between true scientific progress and faith. The Church's cooperation with Neostem is a way of saying that not all stem cell research is harmful to human life.
We strongly support adult stem cells research for 2 reasons. First, of course, because we have very clear ethical statement about the value of human life at each stage of its development. This is the first one. Second, because adult stem cells research is safe, not only from ethical point of view, moral point of view, but from biological, medical point of view.
Currently, over 3,000 clinical trials are looking at new ways that stem cell technology can be used. So far, the success of adult stem cell research has given us a glimpse into what the future of medicine can hold.
Coming up next on Clear Voice.
People are walking out of stores and shops with TV and jewelry and other precious things. At the local Catholic high school, out walks a young man carrying the most precious item possible, protecting Jesus in the form of the host.
Introducing the CatholicTV iPhone application. Carry your faith.
We recently learned of the death of Dr. Jack Kevorkian, who supported what he called the right to die. Assisted suicide is something the Church opposes, instead offering the teaching of redemptive suffering. And to that end, U.S. bishops have drafted a landmark document on assisted suicide. In it, bishops say that medically assisted suicide diminishes the value of life and creates a society of confusion. Rome Reports has details.
For the first time, a full body of U.S. bishops issued a statement on assisted suicide. In a report called To Live Each Day with Dignity, the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops explained why it's against the practice. The report says assisted suicide doesn't promote compassion because its focus is not on eliminating suffering, but on eliminating the patient. According to the document, true compassion comes with meeting the patient's needs and recognizing their equal worth. It also says assisted suicide creates a culture of confusion, where society contradicts itself by accepting the assisted suicide of some patients while trying to prevent the suicide of others. The 6-page report also argues it can lead to dangerous consequences. Although some argue it's a way to face death with dignity, bishops say the notion is false. American bishops fear ultimately doctors may use it as an excuse to deny better health care to seriously ill patients. Despite the fear many people have in facing death, the report says when people are tempted to see their own lives as diminishing in value or meaning, they most need the love and assistance of others to assure them of their inherent worth.
And now we take a look at the many significant events that have happened this week in the Church.
This week in the Church, on June 23, 1983, in Poland, Pope John Paul II met the leader of Solidarity, Lech Walesa. Solidarity was Poland's independent trade union movement. It was banned by the communist authorities in 1982. On June 27, 1977, Joseph Ratzinger was named a cardinal by Pope Paul VI. He became Pope Benedict XVI in 2005. On June 28, 1967, Karol Wojtyła was named a cardinal by Pope Paul VI. He became Pope John Paul II in 1978 and was beatified in 2011. And on June 29, 1951, Joseph Ratzinger was ordained a priest in Germany. And those are just some of the events that happened this week in the Church.
Last week, we heard Matt talk about the devastation and storms that hit his hometown.
Matt Weber continues his reflection on the aftermath of the tornado that swept through Springfield, Massachusetts.
It's an interesting story about looting and about things that are truly precious and Jesus.
Let's hear from Matt in this reflection titled, Jesus.
Last week I mentioned my Catholic high school in Springfield, Massachusetts was hit pretty hard by the tornado. A lot of sadness there, but always some inspiring stories underneath the rubble of pain. This one's from the principal, who sort of self-identified with Job this past year, dealing with both a massive fire and a tornado at the school. But he told me this story, and it's after the tornado hit, he pulled himself up from underneath the water bubbler, and the first thing he went to do was to check on the chapel, to make sure it was okay, to make sure the Eucharist was safe. Then he and the administrators left the building to assess damage, and hours later when the National Guard were called in, they checked the instructional integrity, and they realized it was in question. No one was allowed back into the school. But the principal did not know this at the time and had already instructed his campus minister to go retrieve the ciborium from the chapel with the consecrated hosts and to blow out the candle. The very young-looking campus minister managed to find his way back into the school. He carefully removed the Eucharist from the tabernacle, and then he hurried out the front door holding a giant gold ciborium. Concurrently across Springfield, some unfortunate businesses were, however, being looted. No power, a war zone, minimal security are usually prime indicators of looting to occur. Yet as across downtown Springfield people are walking out of stores and shops with TV and jewelry and other precious things, at the local Catholic high school, out walks a young man carrying the most precious item possible, protecting Jesus in the form of the host and a giant gold bull. However, to a National Guardsman, campus minister protecting the ciborium really does kind of look like a kid stealing gold from a damaged school amidst chaos. Needless to say, as he walked out, they approached him as a thief, and it took some explaining to avoid immediate arrest. Reflecting on these two mini-stories, I like that they're 21st century tales that involve an active relationship with the living Jesus. In this case, it's us protecting him, yet knowing he is always protecting us from storms and heartaches, and in this particular case, from being jailed over mistaken ciborium protection with giant gold bowl looting.
Well, they went in there with the right intention, but unfortunately you see so much of this after these kinds of devastations.
And you can't really blame the National Guard. They're just doing their job, but fortunately the misunderstanding was cleared up. Right. And our thoughts are with everybody in Western Massachusetts suffering from that tornado. That is going to wrap up our show for this week. I'm Christine Caswell. Thanks for being with us.
I'm John Monahan. We hope to see you right back here next week for another edition of Clear Voice.